You're finally here. You've finally arrived. You've at last found the one place which holds the answers to the questions of the ages. You're excited. Your heart palpitates. Is it real? Can it be true? You're understandably hesitant, yet determinedly hopeful. That is good. Your faith in such matters will be rewarded. You'll not find pat and cliched answers here. No! Here is a place of clarity, of definition, of explanation, of truth. Here combines science and religion, removes tradition and replaces it with fact. Here the universe is holographic, yet tangible, ethereal, yet substantive. Here is a place where time is understood as atemporal. Here there is harmony amidst chaos. Here is where the darkened glass is finally cleared. Here is where you'll find the answers to all the unanswered questions which stretch across the cosmos.
And you are across the cosmos for the next hour. I am Chase Rockwell, and I am your host. I am joined once again in studio by my co-hosts,
Dave Cameron,
Mark Wilson,
Wally Rodgers,
Lou Rodgers.
We are resuming where we left off last time on the discussion of the death penalty and whether or not it is something that is equally applied as under the law in our country today. The contention of most of the panel is that it is not. When you have situations where states, district attorneys, attorneys general can decide to file death penalty or not file death penalty in specific cases based upon their wants, their needs, rather than the spirit of the law, it is a situation where there is no equal justice under the law. When killing one person can find the perpetrator of such a deed strapped to a table, a gurney, an electric chair, a noose around their neck, but killing 50 people will find that person supported by the government for the duration of their natural lives. There is, by any definition, no equal justice under the law. This is a struggle because we're dealing essentially in a legal arena where those with law degrees and those who write law feel that they have the firmer grasp of the situation than the run-of-the-mill typical individual citizen. But I don't see it that way. And while this may seem a simplistic rationale, the simple fact of the matter is that if we're going to embrace a culture of death, if murderers are to be executed, then murderers, period, should be executed. There should never be an option for any attorney general, prosecutor, etc., throughout any state to do anything but press for an execution. And the execution, therefore, must be carried out swiftly. Leaving a person on death row for 31 years is a abuse of the rule of law and of so-called justice. But let's resume with this discussion, find out what the rest of the panel has to say.
The interesting thing is you guys are pointing out, the discrepancies in our legal system, which are very clear to me, and I agree. It's faulty. In fact, you said something that really stands out to me, is that a person's statistical career means more than someone's life.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I see that.
No contest.
And as I always do, let me take it to the spiritual side. What happens with putting people to death is that if we're truly here to take on the nature of our Father and learn to be more like Him in this life, if that's part of what the majority of what this life is about, we're taking that away from somebody.
Okay. Our Father?
Our Heavenly
99% of the evangelical church thinks our Father is waiting for you to screw up so He can fry you with lightning bolts.
Well,
He thinks you are a worthless piece of trash, and it is by His very own good grace that He does not drop you into the flames of hell like a spider hanging from a thread.
But that's not your
I like
Father.
your reference there.
That's not your
Wally,
Heavenly
I have a question
Father.
for you. As the audience might know, or not know, because you didn't say anything about it, you are attending Bible college.
Indeed.
Presently. Bible college. So, what would your professors, I don't know, is that what they're called?
Sound like Gilligan. Why would you
Professors, doctors.
Are they doctors?
Yes, most of them
Of
are.
theology.
Are they known also as teachers?
Doctors
Yes.
of theology.
Okay.
I just want to know what their level of education are. Do they have an AA in something, or are they a doctorate in theology, etc.?
Professors have
PhDs?
Most of them either have a doctorate in theology or just a master's in it.
They tenured?
Tenured? No idea.
They're 11-yeared. Some are 12-yeared.
All right. Well, I see this one has just went right off a cliff. What would your professors think of this? And let me rephrase the question. Have you addressed this particular situation in any of the classes you've taken thus far? Have you gotten into the morality of a Christian taking a life?
To be honest, we haven't.
You've been lying?
No, but one of the
To be honest.
most of what we have been talking about hasn't even touched anywhere close to this. A lot of it is just from what we were talking about earlier is original sin, and that's mostly about as far as we've gone. And of course, all of the professors there are going to have different opinions, different like my professor in theology this year completely believes in original sin, that you are a sinner once you are conceived.
Right.
So little babies they're sinners. They're born to sin.
Once you're conceived, you are born of
They
sin.
need the blood of Christ.
That actually,
Yes.
you know what's really weird about that? Then that justifies abortion.
Oh, absolutely. Just get rid of them. Flush them down the toilet. Screw them all.
Send them down their merry path to hell. God's running out of souls to chip into heaven again.
Then God sorted out.
They're just
but
hitting with the sand wedge.
you know, orthodoxy also will teach you, if you really study it and look at it, they'll teach you that there are not very many going to make it to heaven. So God created all of us so that the majority of us can go to hell. Majority of us can go to hell.
That's why
we're condemned there anyway. So.
the reason children were baptized. This was a Catholic perspective. It goes back to the plague. They used to baptize little children in a little baptismal with water, one at a time, and it was a ceremony. They do that all over the world, by the way.
You mean when they slap
It's
them with
still
wet rose?
pretty famous over in the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Well, no, they
They sprinkle now, but in Eastern Orthodox still
they took the
put you in a bath.
sprinkling.
They got to drown them in the holy water.
Well, they took the sprinkling because it was a cost-effective way to reach the babies before they died. During the time of the Black Plague, a lot of infants died. The mortality rate was huge.
like 100%.
And they were taught by their church doctrine that little babies that were unbaptized weren't loved by God. They went to a place called limbo, and limbo was this grayish, eerie place
Where they danced under a pole loaded with
Yes,
guns.
and
terrible.
for $14.95, I will pray that child out of there.
Yeah, so it's people clamor to the churches to get their babies baptized, and if they didn't before they were dead,
And all it was a big scam from the Pope to collect money.
it always has been that way.
Beautiful.
But the idea
It's a
that
business.
babies are born into sin is just a misunderstanding of structure.
Yeah.
And they are born into a corrupt world. And the word corrupt is not a moral issue at all. It's simply
Decaying.
we decay. The body's designed from point of birth to decay. The universe.
So you're implying it just means that they're born into a temporal existence.
Yes, this is a temporal existence. And the idea of flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God is not a moral dilemma. It's a practical dilemma based upon the construction of the physical body cannot inherit the kingdom of God because you must be spirit.
Okay, so
You suffocate. You blow apart.
yes, it's just the two can't
like being
meld
in
together.
space.
I get all that. I suppose my question was directed at you, Wally, because none of us right now are presently in Bible college. I'm not really certain
Bible college.
what they teach altogether. And much of my knowledge with respect to current evangelicalism is just based upon the pastors that have done church and talks and what have you.
That most of them have been through Bible college.
But
So they're reflecting what they...
Well, yeah, and they're reflecting.
Well, today
but
you're seeing
I
less
guess
and less
what
of that.
I'm trying to get to is whether or not there has been any sort of a shift. Like Mark pointed out, that things are starting to change. Is there a change, or are our churches still going to be populated in the 21st century with, and if you'll pardon the expression, this troglodytic mindset from the medieval times.
Well, one thing that we definitely in my college and most of our professors that try to tell us is quit just puking back out what your pastors told you. Go into the scriptures.
But they are the pastors.
Well, they are and they aren't, because they completely agree with people who will be willing to stand up and say, no, I don't believe in this, and they'll say that's okay.
Okay, go into the scriptures.
They want them to go into the scriptures. They tell us, go into the scriptures, find out what you believe, find out what you feel the Spirit is leading you to believe. And, of course, depending on which professor, like I know a professor who is 100% Calvinist, and he'll be telling you that we were
tulip.
Exactly. He'll be telling you that, well, everything that you were going to believe has been already predetermined before. And then there's someone who is completely Arminian, where it's like, just go and be free. Be free from the shackles of being basically predetermined to go to heaven.
And I don't want to get into that, because the whole Calvinism, Arminianism argument was skewed to begin with. John Calvin taught one thing, the Arminians reproached, and then when he dropped dead, his disciples kind of took his basic teachings and then like twisted it into something else.
Yeah.
But
And then you had this harebrained Calvinistic theory juxtaposed with this Arminian belief, and it's like, yeah.
But it's really simplistic theology. It doesn't appear that way to someone who's trying to read it, memorize dates, memorize names, memorize the theology itself. But realistically, it's contained to a very small segment of philosophy.
Sure. I mean, it was out of this battle between the Arminianism and the Calvinism that the deism came up, because most people just threw up their hands and said, "Screw it."
Well, and if I could concretely answer your question, I'd say no. I don't believe that in the 21st century we're going to have these people who are
Be careful now.
I know, but I don't believe that we're going to have these people. From what I've seen, especially from my classmates, that there are definitely people there who are going and trying to figure out these things, not just from their own standpoint, not just from their pastor's own standpoint, but from the people around them.
Okay,
and
let me ask you another question.
Okay.
With respect to the evolution, if you will, of Christian thought within our august college campuses.
Okay.
What did you guys think about Creflo Dollar's $65 million G6?
We didn't even hear anything about it.
It hasn't been discussed.
I can't even believe that. If I were a professor in a Bible college...
you're talking about the prosperity preacher. Yes, we had a couple people who had heard about it, but most people don't really pay much attention to that. From what I've heard, most people were absolutely disgusted and sickened that someone would need such money to go out and preach the gospel when there's missionaries who are going off bottom dollar to preach the gospel in places like Asia and Africa. And
G6 is a nice plane.
Well, yeah, of course it is.
I thought it was a jet.
Wally,
it is a jet.
Just so you know, this particular pastor doubled down and said if they find life in outer space, he's going to need to buy a space shuttle
for $1 billion. He wants a $1 billion space
present
shuttle.
the gospel to the aliens.
Well, that's nice. He can go take out a loan for all I care.
Be in debt.
I just wanted to know what was being said on today's college campuses.
The name of your school?
The name of my school is Multnomah University.
Okay, they're pretty.
They're Baptist.
They used to be extremely Baptist. There actually used to be a assignment where it was go to a Pentecostal church and tell us what's wrong with it. But since then, they've kind of opened their doors to more welcoming people.
Well, that'll happen when you start running out of money.
We have professors who are Methodists and
Methodists. My God, is there no decency anymore?
We have professors who are Baptist, and even
my great grandfather was an itinerant Baptist.
We have some that are Lutherans as well.
Oh dear Lord, you're going to hell! Hell, you're burning.
We mock, as you can see. We mock.
Martin Luther would always, his treatise was "Damned are the Anabaptists." Damned are the constantly was saying that. And I think,
damned were the Jews.
What is it? What is an
like
Anabaptist? What is an Anabaptist?
Luther didn't like a lot of people.
You know what an Anabaptist is?
Yeah.
What?
an Anabaptist, it's what eventually the Baptists themselves morphed into. But, it's kind of like a Mennonite class, the Amish class.
Well, it's you have to make a determination
very
for yourself
much in the legalistic
that
realm.
you want to be baptized. In other words, it's a cognizant decision.
No, but,
That's it.
Their faith-based
As opposed to
is
infant baptism.
very legalist.
That's all it was.
Well, I think
Martin Luther believed in infant baptism.
I think if Martin Luther went and
Well, he was
saw
Catholic.
I
He's a
think if
Catholic monk.
I know, but it's just kind of funny.
It's not like there's really a big difference between Catholicism and the Protestant Church.
No, there's not, sadly.
We teach the same doctrines and crap all the time.
But
there's
they
no
think
pope
there's a
in
big
Lutheranism.
difference.
No, there's no pope, but there's that guy that stands up there in front of everybody and tells you what the Word of God tells for you to do.
and of course he's got to be perfect.
That's the pastor. That is the pastor. Okay, I wanted to declare that because, like I said, we're kind of to some degree isolated in academia here, but we're not getting what's being taught to the students out there.
It's real. That's easy to find out. They have
There's
simple
nothing
courses.
there's nothing like actually. It's different on a college campus,
You can download what they teach.
but it's different. You get it. You get a
more
different feeling when you're
experiential.
on
Yeah,
campus.
I can take all of MIT's classes online, but that doesn't give me an MIT degree.
No, but you can pretty much understand what they're teaching.
Until I
And
went
the
back
direction.
to school. No, until I went back to school late in life, I didn't understand the level of liberalism being taught in class. Even though I regarded myself as rather well-read, it wasn't the subject matter. The subject matter we covered was pretty much what I could have gotten out of books.
But
It was the conversations between the teacher and the class and the students, completely a different cultural setting than what I had anticipated. And so it gave me an insight I know that I would not have gleaned otherwise, because I was one of the older people in the class, obviously. But if I had not been there to counter some of the teacher's claims on some of these social points of view that she brought up, the class would have believed this. But I handed an argument over there. I thought for certain I was going to fail the class, and she ended up giving me an A. Because my arguments were well reasoned and researched. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah,
Imagine that.
a classroom is a political pulpit for a lot of teachers.
Hell, that's all it was. I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff we learned, literally, we could have learned. The book behind you on the shelf up there is what we worked out of. I could have just read the stuff myself for this one particular
And the
class.
same thing in a seminary. It's a theological platform.
And yet there's still an experiential experience,
It
personal,
was
personal experience.
being in the mire, if you will, being surrounded by this particular ideology, which was enlightening to me.
And that personal experience motivated you somehow.
Well, it irritated me because it's like,
Well,
come on.
irritation sometimes
we're teaching a
motivates.
computer science course here, and you're talking about lesbians on parade. What does that have to do with computers?
Theology has a lot of disconnects, and they don't realize it. Dead circuitry, and they try to avoid those issues.
Some of them are dead shorts.
Yeah, the dead shorts. It's like understanding how the Bible came into our English language and the journey it took. And since they don't know the whole story, or they purposely leave out segments of the story.
They purposely.
Well, we've got a class for that called Text and Canon.
Well, even I could read their literature, I read their books, and I'll find that they got disconnects.
What constitutes canon in Bible college today?
Well, in Text and Canon, we go through the entire class. You basically learn from what scriptures we found, and the different councils, Council of Trent, Council of Nicaea, and how that all of those led up to what we have right now.
And what was
today.
significant about the Council of Trent?
Council of
Quick.
Trent.
It
It was 2 years ago. Dang it.
No, get off the stage.
Sorry, I must have missed that class.
When was the Council of
Picking
Nicaea?
on the young man.
369? 80?
That's it. Throw them out. Just throw them out. Just get rid of them. Throw them out the window.
What happened at the Council of Nicaea?
The Council of Nicaea is where they basically got together and decided this is what canon is and this isn't, because we have too many books as Christians, as Orthodox Christians at that, to decide that all of this is one. I would say not made by God, but inspired by God.
That's the Orthodox version.
Actually,
the unorthodox version.
The canon,
for me,
the ultimate canon. The word canon is a liquid word that morphed. Canons were actually when they got together, they're called canons and synods. But they created a canon, a group of
yes,
of
the very
scrolls.
first person to do that was in the New Testament era was Marcion of Sinope.
Yeah, 150 A.D. approximately, right?
Thereabouts.
Yeah. Anyway,
Thereabouts.
what people realize, the Bible, the word Bible means book.
145.
It was the very first book ever created in which they took the scrolls and they rolled them out, translated them onto folio pages, and then they bound it as we see books today. It was the very first book ever created.
And do a codex.
Yeah, so... But
LXX.
as far as everything you're going to learn there's a lot of short circuits within that theology and teaching.
And most of them are tenured.
Oh my gosh, there's so many short circuits. They have no idea what's going
You know
on.
what tenure is?
Not at this moment.
All right.
It's better than 9 year.
Tenure is when you've reached a place where you get permanent residency. They cannot fire you unless you kill somebody.
That's in public systems.
Even in private
You
schools.
sure?
Tenure is tenure. Okay, every school has got their criteria, but essentially, when you reach tenure, it means that you can sit back and just fiddle away. It's like, okay, we're going to watch a video today, and pretty much for the rest of the year. So,
And there's still classes like that. Just give them a video and be fine with it.
When you get up tenured, you can actually just say, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to have my
Sounds like
grad student here teach the class.
So-
See you later.
Sounds like a sacred cow.
it is, and I know I'm digressing a bit.
So who here's for?
I am curious. My question is this: do Christians regard life as sacrosanct?
No,
Explain
they don't.
sacrosanct to
Yes, please.
to the people out there. See, you can't.
Yeah, I
See,
can.
Come on.
I'm just trying to decide how I want to play.
Get out of here.
Is
Yeah, we're
life
defending you.
defensible regardless?
Is life defensible regardless? Do the people out there think that life?
Should the preservation of life be above all else?
Depends on what you define as life.
Oh, for God's sake.
Well, hey, if we're going to parse words,
Well, if we're going to define life, then we're going to have to define death, too. I mean, are we talking both deaths or one death?
and if we're going to define death, we have to define taxes. Because from what I hear, they all three have something.
We're
in
going to be
common.
here all day then.
Okay.
My point in asking this question in the way I asked it was simply this, because getting back to the whole pro-life position, Christians, by definition, should be, in my ever humble opinion, pro-life.
I think 90% of Christians would agree with you.
I would contend that is not the case. 90% is way too high. Maybe 20.
Ooh, I think you're lowballing there.
Nah, I think at 20 I'm probably highballing it. And this is why. Because in dealing with the pregnancy center, going on 22 years now, in dealing with the churches and the lack of support, there are two things that occur. One is it's too controversial a subject and they don't want to advertise that within their congregations because too many within their congregations regard these crisis pregnancy centers in the manner that I explained earlier, is that they're exacerbating a situation which ordinarily would be self-correcting. Little girls would get pregnant however they would, and they'd have an abortion. Thug gone. Problem solved. Okay? We come in, and we're saying, no, life has innate value. Irrespective of how life was created, under what conditions life has innate value, it should be allowed. Okay? And if there's a failure, probably it's on us as the nurturers rather than the child who is born into circumstances outside of their control. Okay? Abortion is a way of cleaning up somebody else's mess. And we pin it on the victim. But these churches don't want to be jacked up in the parking lots 13 years down the road by some thug that they could have gotten rid of before the fact. So
I don't think churches think that way. I just think they don't want to address
to counter
the issue.
that claim. I have seen. There's one woman in particular comes to my mind who was visibly angry over the mere fact that the center was even there, and she was a member and standing at one of the local churches here.
Well,
of
no,
prominence.
that's The Planned Parenthood is a
Not Planned Parenthood.
Well, Planned Parenthood is a direct descendant of the eugenics program that was very popular in the 1920s in America and furthered by Nazi Germany and also in Russia. We supposedly abandoned the project because of the fire. Again.
It came out of the overpopulation theory.
Well, the whole idea behind eugenics is build a better tomorrow by getting rid of
on the backs of people today.
Yeah, sterilizing people who are disadvantaged mentally, who are handicapped, and you sterilize them, and therefore there won't be any offspring with potential, because they didn't understand genetics back then. They couldn't look into the gene.
No, if they had, they'd have started with themselves.
Right. But anyway, Planned Parenthood came off that as a way to curb the overpopulation.
I thought it was just a way to make money.
Well, it's
You're
subsidized by the United States government, and so there's an advantage to the removal of young babies. Sadly, it's a fiscal issue now, and there's people's jobs at stake. In your situation, that your care and pregnancy center, you're trying to encourage young ladies to keep their child to term with the idea of, if they cannot afford it, the idea of finding a home for it. There are people that don't have children that would love children. But there's a lot of, legalities there that are difficult.
Adoption in the United States is extraordinarily difficult because of the hurdles in place.
So
that's why there's so many foreign adoptions.
When churches look at you think, well, how come there's no support when we're pro-life? I thought they're believers in God. They would want this. Well, because it's a dilemma. It's a frustration. It's difficult.
I contend a lot of it has to do with what you mentioned with respect to the original sin, and that is they see these babies as essentially damned already.
Yeah.
If you put it in the cart, then we got to deal with them. Just leave them off the cart.
Well, there's even more to that, and I think you hit on it, Chase, just a few seconds ago, when we talked about the failure becomes...
Say abject failure.
Abject failure, if you'd like, is on those of us that are here to nurture the upcoming group. Mm-hmm. And in that fact, that does one thing for the American church. It implies responsibility for your own damn actions.
But we like to look at everyone else's actions so much.
Exactly.
The law relieves us of responsibility. The law places responsibility essentially in the rules, and it empowers us to carry out those rules. And it's a neat little package, but it keeps us all perpetual infants. We're not maturing. So. The pro-life argument on either end, whether it be a condemned criminal or an unborn child, or even as Peter Singer, who is an ethicist, and God help me, I think it's Princeton, but don't hold me to that. I'll have to look up his bio again. Peter Singer is an ethicist who has advocated that children up to the age of 2 should be allowed to be euthanized by their parents.
That's a joke, right?
It's not a joke.
If that's the case, there'd be a lot less children in this world.
He contends it's only to 2 months, but there is many, many, many speeches that he has advocated up to as much as 24 months.
I guess it's like Kodak. You take a picture, you look at it, You
don't like it, you throw it away.
He doesn't regard children at that age as having any redeeming value.
What?
And so, if they present a problem,
they're nothing
just
more
get rid
than
of
a
them.
tax write-off.
Wouldn't that be called a hate crime?
No, he's an ethicist.
He's not picking a specific ethnicity. He is labeling all kids at 2 and under as nothing more than a tax deduction. If you don't like it, get rid of it.
Well, the problem if it is, though, we're overlooking that all these different races are human, and he's attacking the human race.
He's not a Christian, I take it, right?
No, he's not a Christian.
Okay, that's just wondering.
Where was he? Let me see. He's
so I mean, he's
Princeton University, bioethics at Princeton University.
And he's allowed to teach. He's allowed to teach.
What do you mean he's allowed to teach?
He's probably tenured.
He's a professor. He's got a doctorate in bioethics.
That's moronic state university. He's an imbecile.
Princeton is regarded as one of our Ivy League colleges.
That breaks down in so many
Well, he
levels.
just
it's
made
ridiculous.
himself God.
Why do you say that?
Well, and what's the difference between that and a judge saying, I sentence you to death?
He's not. Well, first of all, he's not coming from a point of law. He's coming from a point
This
of
is
philosophy.
completely a point of what he respects, or regards rather,
Philosophy.
as a moral base, as a human being.
Right. It's a philosophy. It's his
When
thought.
you
It's his.
remove, for example, God from the equation,
Well, that's
or,
the
or
problem.
better, Christ or Father God from the equation,
That's
then you're dealing with the base, pulpy material.
exactly.
And from there, it becomes a matter of practicality. If you've got a child, let's say born with a severe handicap, deformity, etc., whatever, it doesn't matter. Up to the age of 2, he's believing that you have more than enough time to see whether or not this child is going to have any quality of life, whether that life will be worth, in their estimation, continuing. And if at that point of time you have determined as the parent, now the quality of life is going to suck, it's going to suck resources, money, and there's nothing redeeming this child, kill him.
There's no difference between that than Nazi Germany.
No, absolutely not. And the Nazis did the
So,
exact same
but-
thing.
but we accept-
the first
but
killings
people
in
will
Nazi
accept
Germany were
that.
the mentally infirm, the handicapped,
Well, that's where
etc.
it started.
Sure.
But again, we'll accept that, and we can't connect. We can't make the connection of what's really going on.
Well, Singer's
What's
been...
really going on is he's saying that people have the right to sentence a child to death based on what they think's gonna. Have you ever seen children?
But they don't call it a sentence of death. They call it a compassionate response to an untenable situation.
Except for all those words that they use, the definitions, and all. When it comes, how many times have you seen one of your children? I saw this with my children. How many times do you see one of your children have complete? I mean, you just. Well, I saw it with my grandson extremely. He was a child, and until he was like 4 or 5. Until he was 4 or 5, he didn't look like he was even. Wasn't able to function. He didn't talk. He didn't. As a baby, he just laid there. I mean, he crawled late. He walked late, and now he's 4 years, almost 5 years old, and he's just a bright kid.
Fortunately, thus
So
far...
by two, if you would have judged him at 2, that it would have been easy to say he has nothing. He has
I
nothing.
understand that completely. Fortunately, thus far, Singer's ideas are still regarded as fringe. But the mere fact that he is a professor on staff at Princeton, that he has got an audience at all, that he hasn't been resoundingly thrown out of the intellectual community or academic community, tells me a lot. And that's why I'm looking at Wally here, who's in the academic community as a young student now. What the hell are we teaching the next generation? If we've got people like Singer...
Well, if you go outside of our United States, I think you presented the Singer case a little bit kind of myopic to me in my mind, because I don't know anything about it other than the fact that here's a guy that says under 2 you can kill your child. But I think what you're talking about is severe physical maladies.
No, but the way... That's his pretext for getting in on the
where
books.
that's where you
However,
open the
in
door.
Europe now, I believe Belgium is one of the countries, again, I'll have to look it up, don't hold me to this, euthanasia for children is becoming more and more accepted. There's already euthanasia for the elderly. In Oregon, we have right to life, or right to death laws, that you can just right
All
to die,
over
I
the
guess they call
world,
it.
prior to what we call the modern age, if your child, if you didn't like your child, or if there was some kind of physical malady that would slow you down, if most people farmed or gathered food, you just put, it's called exposing your child. You put him out, and you didn't kill him or her. You let the elements kill them.
Yeah, that's a
either
dodge.
a wild wolf or just
But that's killing them.
That is
Yeah,
killing
you're
them.
abandoning them. You're
right.
killing
It's
them.
that was a very normal thing to do. And some cultures, they'd look over the child, and if it wasn't perfect or up to snuff, they throw it off a cliff.
That
Hail
happens
Sparta.
in China today. China is very much a
Girls.
male-centered
Yes.
country because traditionally the male is the one who's going to earn the living, is going to carry on the name, etc. So girls are routinely, especially in China where you have a one-child policy due to this overpopulation problem, they are still. You are born a girl, either, especially in today's situation where they've got sonograms, etc., DNA testing, they can tell whether or not you're going to have a girl or a boy. Abortions, sex-selective abortions are way, way, way up in China. But even in the peasant areas, you have a girl, they have a pail of water next to the bed, you just drown the kid because you can always have another shot at getting a son. So you get rid of the girl. So we've got this imbalance of population in China now where we've got the ratios really, really badly skewed where there's just like double the amount of males to females. And it's because of this cultural, I don't know, misogyny, if you will.
So how do we fix all that?
Well, that's the question that we're posing here.
Just like the prisons, how do we fix
We've got
all
the
that?
death penalty situation. Christians are supposed to be the face of God to their fellow man.
And so what is it
when
we should do?
carry around with us this culture of death, when we advocate this...
They are the face of God. They're God. They are.
No. We're supposed to be the face of Creator, Father, God Almighty, Jesus Christ.
Now we're going right back down to the crust of the problem.
I remember when Ted Bundy was executed back in 1989 for his murders. And I laughed because it's funny. And it is funny. There was this guy, they took a picture of crowds outside the prison. And this was one guy that held the sign up that said, "Have a seat, Ted." And it showed us an electric chair. And it was funny to me, because you have this dark humor. And the same thing Dennis Miller had often said, "I'm against capital punishment, but as long as it's still lawful, we may as well enjoy it." So, and that's this dark humor aspect
Christ
of
It
it.
doesn't make sense to me.
Christ
but-
came into a world in which capital punishment was very normal.
Yeah,
If we had
it did.
1,400
It had an
deaths
impact on him.
in 40 years. In the year 64 AD alone, there was well over several 100,000 deaths due to the fire at Rome.
Oh, easily.
On crucifixion.
All
So-
state advocated and sponsored, by the way.
Right. So
state
right. So
advocated.
what I'm saying is that he came into our world that had capital punishment. The Jews practiced capital punishment at that time, but had to get permission from the governor.
they had to go through the Roman government.
Government, which was generally through the Herod. If not that channel, they go directly to the governor. But they could have stoned the woman to death, for instance,
They could have because she was another Jew, and the Romans wouldn't have cared.
They wouldn't have gotten
cared
involved,
less.
right? So, but capital punishment was pretty much stopped by the Roman government, the stoning issue, unless they got a writ that was okayed. But the point is, Jesus came into this world, and there is nothing in regards to the apostles' writings. There's nothing in regards to John's revelation. There's nothing in regards to Jesus' words that would directly address this issue.
No, that's why I brought up that piece of scripture in Matthew chapter 8 with respect to the woman about to be stoned. That, to me, told me all I needed to know about Christ's views on capital punishment.
No, it told you that there was a woman caught in the act of adultery.
Which was a capital offense.
Right.
Under the
According
law.
to the
Under the
law,
law.
that was not written by him. Okay?
Who cares?
They were trying to it wasn't a law of the state. It was a law based upon the God they followed and served.
Yes, which they
For
believe
instance,
superseded the law of the state.
Rome did not uphold to that law. So it was
No,
it was
Rome could
illegal.
cared less.
Right. So it was one of moral dilemma. And they believed, for instance, if you gathered wood on the Sabbath,
Do you understand
you were to be killed.
the asinine point of view when you've got temple prostitutes? When Fred, the Hebrew, says so long to his wife at the beginning of the day, "I'm going out to do my godly stuff. I'm going to go read the Torah, blah, blah, blah." And he goes to the temple prostitute, does his little thing with the temple prostitute, is on his way back home with Sam, his buddy that lives next door, and they see, Hazel over there, who comes out of, Jed's house. Well, that dirty blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're going to stone her. Give me a friggin' break. And this is the mindset going on, okay? And, yeah, I get these people were enmeshed in the law. and they
Jesus didn't
used it-
stop them from stoning her.
No, he didn't stop them from
He
stoning
didn't
her.
command them to stop
But
stoning
no,
her.
but my point was, is it showed me his character respecting the situation.
But what he said was very powerful.
Yeah. What if he just said, "Hey, have at it, boys.
No, but
the rocks are over there."
Anybody know what he did?
That
say?
would have been advocating it. Yeah,
Okay.
let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
So
at
where
her.
does that put who does that put the burden on?
Puts them on them.
On whom?
The
On
accusers.
the accusers.
The accusers and the stoners. Okay, so
Hey, dude, leave the stoners out
now
of it, man.
If stoners
if
wouldn't
you
have
go
done anything.
to
They just wanna
in capital
live.
punishment, the same words are to be said to them. Let he or she who was without sin pull that switch or make that
The
judgment.
problem is we have taken capital punishment and placed it into the hands of a mindless,
However-
soulless, unreasoning, logical machine. You
However-
cannot reason. It's like the Terminator. What did his name? John Connor say to Sarah Connor about the Terminator? You can't reason with it. You can't bargain with it. It's going to keep coming after you until it kills you.
Okay.
And that's capital punishment law in this country today.
Well, I agree with that. That we should it should be the person, like, if I kill someone in your family, Chase, it should be up to you to press the button.
Do you want to
while
hear something
looking at me.
interestingly about Islamic law? Even in Iran today, under Sunni Sharia law, the victim or the victim's family at any time can stop that execution. There was a case not long ago where a guy was actually free swinging from the garret. And the family of the victim said, "Okay, that's enough, cut him down." And they did. And
I
they
think
released
that
him.
it should be the same here.
United States? Absolutely not. The free swinging would have kept going no matter what the victims found. Because you know what the law in the United States is that the family is not the victim here. Those who grieved are not the victims. The state is the victim.
That's completely selfish of the state.
No, the state is written that
Well,
way because you have committed a crime against the state. The state compiles the law, places them into function, and so any offense you commit, I shoot Dave. It's not Dave who's the victim. It's not Dave. It's not his wife who's the victim. It's not his kids. It is the state.
So now
who ordinarily could give a dead, festering rat's ass about Dave.
And the reality of it is, then, the machine of the state has become more
important, powerful.
than the individual.
Exactly. But the state has no conscience. It has no reason. It has no compassion. The state is only the law. So we're right back to Exodus, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's-
this secular monolith in 2015 in the United States borrows everything, every bit of rationale from the law of the Jews.
Yeah, but
Well, not every bit.
Thank you very much.
Jesus
I'm here every
said,
week.
Jesus said,
that's the basis, and that's how they're empowered.
"My
That's what it
kingdom
comes
is not of this world." He said,
Jesus said that.
and we as Christians say the same thing. My kingdom is not of this world. I'm not here to change this world.
No, we're here to change the hearts of others.
Right. And there's going to
To
be
be-
people that are going to die.
Well, I get that. I'm not
Should not we
naive.
then have the choice to be able to say, no, he doesn't get the death penalty? Show him grace just as we were.
We can say that.
That issue has been raised and has been shot down repeatedly. Because, again, the pretext is that the offense is not against an individual or even a group of individuals. It's against the state. And that's what differentiates criminal from civil. Now, for example, O.J. Simpson went before a jury of his peers. And they found him not guilty of slaughtering his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her boyfriend, Ron Goldman, with a knife. Because if the glove don't fit, you gots to acquit.
Man, that's just straight up racist.
Okay?
You know, I never saw anything of that trial.
You didn't.
I think I'm the only human on earth who's never. And I was.
It was
what
actually
I,
quite amusing
30
at a
years
certain
old
point.
during it, 30-something years old.
Yeah.
I never saw 1 second of that trial.
Well, you missed a show, let me tell you. Anyway.
I still haven't.
Completely caught me now. Now, the point is lost. Where was I going with this?
I
hate
have
this.
no idea.
Oh, I was getting back to the whole point of...
If the gloves don't fit,
No. I was getting back to the point of
the glove do
the
fit?
state being aggrieved or not being aggrieved.
Granted, every criminal case is the plaintiff is always the state in every criminal case. It's state versus.
But the family of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson were not regarded as the aggrieved there. The state of California was regarded as the aggrieved. And therefore, it went before a criminal trial, and despite the I'm going to be real sarcastic
Acquittal.
here. Despite
Failure.
the legal expertise of Marcia Clark and Chris Darden, he was acquitted. Found not guilty of slaughtering those two people.
Until
However, Ron Goldman's family joined with the Nicole Brown Simpson's family, sued him in civil court. The situation in civil court is far different than criminal. For example, the aggrieved is not the state in civil court; it is the individual.
And that's how it should
And
be.
so, in civil court, where also the burden of proof is much lower, O.J. Simpson got his ass handed to him, and also a $30 million judgment. So he had to sell all his stuff, including his Heisman Trophy.
Okay.
Which led him to this Nevada hotel room, 8 years later? In a strong-armed burglary, which now landed him in prison for 30 years. And here's the situation.
For kidnapping.
The good people of Nevada recognize this guy got away with murder. And despite the jury's verdict back in 1996 that he was tried, they slammed him back into prison where they felt he belonged. Now, he's not in death row, but he'll probably die in prison. He's not getting out anytime soon. He keeps being denied parole or retrial. Anyway, off the topic. My whole point was that it's interesting that we, in these situations where a life hangs in the balance, we're dealing with a mindless machine.
We're dealing with the world.
We're dealing with a mindless machine.
Well, it's a mindless machine in that, and it really reflects. I'm going right back there. It really reflects what the church has done with the law. The law is more powerful than anything.
Do you think that
The state,
the
the
secular
law-
state is aware? Now, certainly, if you go to law school, you understand that the basis of our law is based upon the King's Law of Old England, and of course, the King's Law of Old England goes all the way back to the Magna Carta and
But
before.
it's not going to change.
No, my point is that does the secular machine today realize that all they are doing is borrowing a system of jurisprudence from the Hebrew book?
Yeah, but it's not relevant.
It should be.
It's not. Because everyone coming up into any specific office to fulfill the obligation of the law in which we're under, they're filling their day with just simply that. They don't care where it came from.
Well, that's my point. But then as Christians, we're simply following along in lockstep. We're not stepping back and saying, hey, Christ said, you've heard it said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, but I tell you, don't resist an evil person.
Right.
If someone strikes you on the right cheek,
We
turn
can
and give them
teach
the other.
that to others, and that's part of the good news. That's part of the gospel. What Jesus said, teach them to obey all that I commanded you. And if you look at his commandments, they're pretty easy. Love one another.
Okay.
Love your Father in
If you're
heaven.
strapping somebody to a gurney, mocking them in the process, as you
That
fill
is-
their veins with a toxic chemical, you probably don't love them too much.
Again,
In a Christian way or otherwise.
I go back
That would
to-
be George W. Bush towards
I can't-
Carla Faye Tucker.
I can't place that on him.
You can't place it on him.
No.
The record places it on him. His words place it on him.
Yeah, but he'll stand before our Father with
He
that.
will stand before his father. And I hope Carla Faye Tucker's standing there next to him saying, hey, thanks a lot, buddy.
Well, it's not going to be that way at all.
But it should be.
I think that I go back to. I think we need to realize that laws and rules in our society are for a reason. They're legitimate.
No
Yeah.
doubt. I understand that we need the rule of
It'd be
law.
chaos without it.
And then I think we need to realize the spiritual aspect of what Christ did for us with the original law, and I think it's real important for our listeners and people out there to be able to separate the two, to recognize the reason for the social laws, and to understand what Jesus' agenda for us was. And that's for us to live in this life, to be able to learn who our Father is, who we really are, because we definitely come as children, we grow up from a very self-centered point of view, position. And until we learn Jesus' love and his selflessness and take on which happened in part, but we got to take on the nature of our Father, our Heavenly Father, not who they consider their Father.
And I kind of feel like we've beat this one to death for the moment, but
no conclusions really. But
no, there's never going to be a conclusion because we're here on this earth. There were two cases I wanted to get into, but it just never came up, and it dealt with the execution of children in the United States and how both of them were absolutely sanctioned. One took place back in 1786, and the girl was 12 years old when she was hung. And the Reverend Henry Channing presided over her disposition of her mortal soul. His entire sermon given on the day that she was executed was as an object lesson as to the parents and how not to raise your children because they'll turn out like this girl. This girl's father was unknown. Her mother was a Pequot Indian and an alcoholic. She was essentially abandoned and sold into, bound out is the term they used to use back then, to a widow, to basically be an indentured servant at a young age of like 10. And God only knows what her life had been like as a half-breed in a Puritan society, because this happened in New London, Connecticut. And there was no mercy granted at all. The judge in her case even mentioned the fact that even at her young age, it didn't excuse her for the vicious crime that she committed. And the vicious crime she committed was she killed a neighbor girl because they were arguing over a basket of strawberries. And then she tried to hide the body. You have kids who are kids. There's a lot of speculation in the literature that she was also mentally disabled. If her mother was an alcoholic, she well could have been suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome, even if they didn't know what it was back then. Regardless, New London, Connecticut back then, method of hanging, the long drop wasn't invented until right around the time of the Civil War. And it wasn't refined until towards the end of the 19th century. So the short drop was the method of execution then, which meant you essentially strangled to death. And if you weren't heavy, it was a long, torturous death because there wasn't sufficient enough tension or weight to cut off the carotid artery. You strangled.
Well, what happened is, but not only that, the more they wiggled, the tighter it got, the more...
But even then, she maybe weighed 85 pounds.
Right.
And you just don't have the level of tension necessary.
No, she's
a short drop hanging ordinarily would cut off the carotid artery, so you'd lose consciousness. Then you'd strangle.
Right.
But without that tension, carotid artery would not be completely blocked. Blood flow would continue to get to the brain, which means you wouldn't lose consciousness. You would simply strangle to death.
Suffocate.
And it's a lousy way to go. And what was very typical was what they called this dance of death, because lighter people especially would begin to twitch and jerk and everything at the end of the rope as they were trying to get free, trying to suck in air that would never come again. So anyway, this was the youngest person ever executed in the United States after the United States actually became a country. It wasn't the last. George Stinney was executed in 1944. He was 14 years of age. So the United States has a long history of killing people, killing kids.
That's two.
It wasn't until 2005. It wasn't until I don't care if it was one. One is too many. Does that make it right? Does that make it right? Does that make it right?
You can't look at the United States on this.
I do. I most definitely do. The United States is not an Obama country. Obama regards the United States as no more exceptional than any other country on the face of the earth. I vehemently disagree with that. The United States
the first one was a Puritan Act.
What Reagan... I don't care.
Based upon
I don't
myopic
care.
thought.
I don't care. I don't care.
It still
doesn't make
a
it right.
A man of God stood by and allowed this little girl
How many children
to be hung.
Have been executed in Africa in the same duration of time?
Tons. This isn't
that
Africa.
200-year
This
period.
is the United States of America.
I'm just asking.
And we were based upon something different, upon something better. We are an exceptional country. We are the last great hope on the face of this entire godforsaken planet.
Which is why we only had two compared to Africa's millions.
I don't know. Those are the two I mentioned. I have scores more. Do you want me to read them all?
Well, they couldn't come close to Africa.
No, they couldn't. But again, this is not sub-Saharan Africa. This isn't South Africa. This isn't Northern Africa. This is the United States of America, the last great hope on the face of the globe.
Who told you that? Where does that come from?
That comes from reading the Constitution. Have you read the Constitution?
Yes.
Have you read the Constitution?
Yes, but-
Have you juxtaposed the Constitution with the documents of any other country on the face of the earth, going back even to the republics of old? If you did, you would see the
You're
difference.
a patriot, and I give you kudos for that. That's wonderful.
But it means nothing to you.
This is not our world.
I don't care.
We have a fantastic nation. We do.
Yes, and even as good as the United States is, even as bad as the criminal justice system here is, it's still better than most any other on the face of the earth.
I would say so.
It's not the perfect reflection of heaven.
No, and I didn't say it was.
And
I
it
said it
can't
is
be.
the last best hope on the face of this earth.
Right, but the reality of
And
it
the
is,
apathy
in
within
this
the
realm,
Christian community,
it can't
the
be.
culture of death they drag with them, is part of the reason we're seeing this decay. Because too many people sitting down and don't care. Oh, we'll let the Obamas, we'll let the Hillary Clintons take over. Who cares? It's all going to burn anyway.
Well, that's not where I'm coming from. You might
But
think,
too many Christians believe that. You've got an entire Christian community in the Christian Zionists led by John Hagee who are doing their utmost to bring in and usher in the apocalypse by growing that damn red cow.
well, you know, by that train of thought,
I thought it was a bull.
they are missing again. They're missing what they're
where
here
they got it
for.
wrong.
They're missing why they're here.
But they don't
really
know
are.
that, and that's not what they're teaching.
They just want to get it over with. Jesus is moving too damn slow. Kick him in the ass and get it going.
Right.
And
Again,
those people will slaughter, or are counting on the slaughter of hundreds of millions
Didn't Jews
over
try
the
to do that
world.
at the beginning?
Yeah,
What was that, Wally?
I said, didn't Jews try to do that at the beginning when Christ first came? Try to get him to go to Rome, shoot fireballs from his fingertips
the
to take
Jews
over.
were looking, not necessarily Christ, the Jews were looking for Messiah to be another Mosaic figure, correct?
Yeah.
And when he didn't deliver, they nailed him to a post. I get all of that. That was no better then than it is today.
Yeah.
we combine again the physical realm and the spiritual realm, and we try to make the two work.
If we don't, as Christians, have a particular ideal
I
in
agree.
mind, we grow apathetic because then we
I
start to
agree.
give license to the miscreants, and the miscreants grow. They breed like roaches because they've got nothing to stop them. No natural predators. No balance.
What are the miscreants?
The miscreants are all over the place.
Are they humans or?
What do you think?
I'm trying to figure this out.
What's the definition of that word?
A miscreant?
Yeah.
It's a very low. A miscreant.
Well, I
is-
don't know all the definitions of every word. I'm not an English person.
It's
Okay, Dave, we're not laughing at you.
I don't care.
considered
You
a
can laugh at
foul
me.
word if someone calls you a miscreant.
Most politicians are miscreants. Most people in authority are miscreants. These are people who have taken the bounty that has been given to them by Father God Almighty and have turned it into something they can use for selfish gain. So the term covers a large,
Kind of
wide
sounds.
swath of
Kind of
humanity.
sounds like a natural man to me, one
Oh,
that's
most
born
definitely.
into this physical.
But does
realm.
that mean we're supposed to give it pass?
No, I don't agree.
Why do you think Pilate asked Christ when what is truth? Pilate understood quite well the ideology or the mindset of a miscreant. He didn't want to be there any more than Christ wanted to be there. They were both victims, if you will, of their circumstances. Pilate knew that in order to ascend in Roman stature, he needed to do his time in Judea. And then as soon as he did it, he wanted to get the hell out. And he
Now,
did.
To bring us up to date, because we use the word miscreant.
I use
as
the
a-
word
as a
miscreant
name.
because
But
I like it.
It's very appropriate.
It is
name.
appropriate.
Here's what it means: a person who behaves badly, or in a way that breaks the law. So it's not as negative as I thought.
It's
A
negative enough.
delinquent, a hoodlum, a reprobate, a criminal, a culprit, a wrongdoer, a malefactor, offender, a villain, lawbreaker, or an evildoer.
I think I've been called those a couple times.
That is a miscreant.
There you go. an appropriate usage of the term. That's why I use it. Okay, we're going to have to conclude this for now because we've pretty much beaten the subject of death. No pun intended. But it's a subject I think we're probably going to have to revisit at some point or another because truly, in my opinion, as a Christian, especially one who claims to be pro-life, if you aren't pro-life on both ends of the spectrum, you're not really pro-life. You may be anti-death penalty, you may be anti-abortion, but you're not pro-life. And there needs to be some clarity in language. Just like there was some fog as to the term miscreant, there's some fog as to the term pro-life. Pro-life means just that. Pro-life. You want to lock up a killer? Lock him up. But you kill an innocent person, you're not bringing them back. And it's too much just to throw up your hands and say, well, let God sort it out. Or he's in the hands of Jesus now, because if that were the case, we ought to just off every one of us, because then we'll all be in the hands of Jesus.
Well,
problem solved.
Then there's
but that isn't what Christ died on the cross for us, is it?
Then there's no meaning to this life, and that's one of the things that we have to figure out and understand. What are we here for? Who are we?
To be like Christ,
right.
To be selfless, not selfish.
That's a part.
I
totally agree with that.
In this world, who wrestle with this issue in hand-to-hand combat when somebody attacks them or their family. Someone's trying to kill a child. And you, with all of your strength and ability, lunge over and try and get him off your child, only to find that he's got something pressed against you or your child's neck. Mm-hmm. So you grab something, you hit him, and you kill him. You have been judge, jury, and executioner.
Exactly.
Okay, so what have you done?
Let me give you some clarity. I'm going to tell you. Let me give you some clarity on my point of view, just so that the audience, as well as my august and esteemed co-host, understand exactly where I'm coming from. Were I to find myself personally in such a situation, somebody causing or in the process of causing imminent harm and possibly death to friends or family members, or even somebody within proximity, a helpless victim, and I had the means to take them out, I would be like Clint Eastwood. Go ahead, make my day.
Go ahead, make my day.
And then I'd blow them away, because that is what is necessary to do for an imminent threat upon your life. But that is not the same as this cold, calculated, institutional killing that we see going on with our states today.
Every one of us, I think, has that inside of us.
Yeah, now you're splitting hairs with the Old Testament law, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit murder. Mm-hmm. We're splitting the hairs. Does a military person that belongs in the United States Army that's gone to Afghanistan and had to kill people, because if he didn't kill them, they were going to kill other people.
Right, so we find ourselves...
What we're talking about is saying, look, you've killed people, we think you're going to kill again, so we're going to kill you. Or, is that okay versus someone that breaks in and it says, I'm going to kill your wife, and it's you're standing in between you and your wife. There's two different stories.
Well, the problem is the people that have already killed and got away with it, that are now on death row, there was no champion to stand up against them. In other words, there wasn't a you in the room to go against them when they killed the woman. Generally it happens, they kill defenseless people. They brutally rape them, they kidnap them, they do heinous acts to them.
Most of those types of...
And they don't have a champion at their side to fight for them. So, in other words, they were killed in a brutal, sometimes methodical manner. And so the courts have to make a decision. And I look at that and I say, that's beyond me. I mean, I can have my opinion sitting back here, and we have a system in place. But if you look at what those people did, if there would have been a champion in their corner at that moment in time when this little 12-year-old girl's brutalized, I'm sure that perpetrator would have been killed.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm looking at. Yeah, there's a bigger picture here. And I can't condemn the United States at all for what and how they do their procedures. Is it a legitimate thing to do, to take a person's life? I don't know. I know I couldn't. But then again, if I was placed in a situation, maybe I would.
Just simply from the legal aspect, we kind of try to touch on two different aspects. One was the legal, one was the moral through the Christian mindset. I was interested in knowing what the fellow Christians regarded this as. Should we be pro-life as a Christian? Should we advocate the death penalty? My experience talking to other Christians is that too many of them are pro-death penalty. That bugs me. That's me. It bugs me. From the legal aspect, I know, just as George Ryan in Illinois understood, as John Kitzhaber in Oregon, as Jay Inslee in Washington State understood, that equal justice is not applied equally under the law. It just isn't.
I agree with that
It isn't.
statement.
And if it isn't, when a life is in the balance, then you should err on the side of caution. You can incarcerate these people, and you can make certain that they don't get out. And then if a group like the Innocence Project come through, or if laws change to reflect better DNA testing, scrutiny, etc., to determine whether or not somebody was convicted lawfully, then they're still alive and they can come back and salvage whatever their life is.
If all
We're not
information,
barbarians, and we shouldn't act
if all
like
information is forthcoming, all DNA tests prove it, all eyewitness testimony, films, videos, all prove this person did this incredibly heinous act, and it's no question. What do you do then?
Then, like I addressed in my commentary, I look at the situation with the Manson clan. Of everyone who was convicted, except for Charles Manson himself, convicted. There were a couple of stragglers that weren't caught up in that, and they never did go to prison for those things. But of the group that was convicted of the Tate LaBianca murders, all of them became Christians. All of them used their time behind bars, and still do, those who are still alive, to further the cause of Christ as they came to understand it. It was a crucible they went through. God used them, and they availed themselves of that teaching. They listened. Now, none of that would have happened if they'd have been snuffed when they were supposed to be snuffed.
Agreed.
Now, the yin to the yang is that, of course, Charles Manson is still an unrepentant murderer behind bars. Mm-hmm. But all of them would have been denied that opportunity. Charles Manson is one person of all of them who could never go and stand before his creator and say, "You didn't give me a chance." Because in the same length of time behind bars as the kids he lured into this, he's the only one that didn't see the light, if you will. So, can a person incarcerated behind bars make a change, a real change? Absolutely.
The difference would
and
be...
we as a state deny that possibility for God to work in those people's lives by becoming
the difference
God in them.
In our United States would be 1,400 and a few souls would still be alive, as opposed to, unless they were off in prison, would still be alive today as opposed to being dead. So it's only 1,400. So could we have...
You start getting into the statistical aspect, and I'm talking about a societal condition.
My point is, could we as a country have contained those only 1,400 nationwide without killing them? And what would the effect be today if we would have done that? That's what we have to look at.
I think that overall, if we as a country, if we as our leaders, and this may be Pollyanna-ish of me, I understand that. As Gene Hackman said, people are no damn good.
People are no damn good.
I get that too. But I believe that we should set an example as the country that is the last great hope on the face of this earth, and not court the culture of death that we do. But we do, and it should be no surprise now while we've got little kids going into schools and shooting them up, while we've got just disregard for human life all over the place, because this is what we fostered. Life is cheap. It's cheaper in other countries, but it's exceptionally cheap here. We have no respect for life. And therefore, we have no respect for who we are before Christ. That has to change. We're here to be lights, to be the face, to be truth to one another, or we're not here.
By abandoning God in the in society, the school system specifically, that train children. By abandoning God wholesale,
the government.
The problem they created was they left a vacuum because they refused to teach morality, because there was no platform to teach morality.
They teach the morality of the law, the Old
So-
Testament law.
Well, ethics is a particular problem, because what is your basis for ethics? So, in essence, it's not taught. Toleration is taught. Toleration is taught. That's what's taught.
Unless you're a Christian, unless you're a conservative.
No, I'm talking about in schools. Basically, toleration is taught, and they want to have this uniformity worldwide
If
of
you're
political
LBGT,
acceptance.
toleration is
And the problem is
demanded.
that allows for a moral vacuum, which they're seeing. So you wonder why, when you have such toleration with absolutely no limits and no laws at all governing morality, because there is no God in the teachers' minds, then you have these situations where kids will go berserk and shoot people, or do other heinous crimes at young ages, and they wonder what's going on. Is it the music? Is it society itself?
I agree with that, but I have to add that when they see the church also encouraging and nurturing this culture of death on the other end of the spectrum, where do you... When I was a kid, this movie came out on TV. It affected me terribly, even to this day.
The Addams Family?
And it was called The Execution of Private Slovik. And it was the only person executed for desertion in World War II. And Martin Sheen acted as Eddie Slovik in the movie. It was a very well done, made-for-TV movie. And, of course, the people at the time were all crying about the fact that all it was doing was, promoting anti-death penalty for all the whiners and the granola-crunching progressive liberals, etc. I didn't see it that way at all. That may have been their intent, but... Again, all you're doing as a Christian is taking this mocking tone towards somebody's life.
Right.
Eddie Slovik summed it up quite well in his trial before he was executed. He said, "I'm not being executed for desertion. I'm being executed because I was the 12-year-old boy who used to steal a loaf of bread so he could eat. Because he was a juvenile delinquent. His parents didn't take care of him, etc." So, anyway... Good, bad, or indifferent, I suppose those are my thoughts, and everybody's got their thoughts. We should conclude this for now. So, for
Dave Cameron,
Mark Wilson,
Wally Rodgers.
Lou Rodgers.
I am Chase Rockwell saying so long until the next time you find yourself across the cosmos.
Send any questions or comments to us via email at info@acrossthecosmos.com. Also, visit us on the web at www.acrossthecosmos.com for show updates, news, and other important information. No part of this podcast may be used without the express written permission from the staff of Across the Cosmos. Across the Cosmos is a production of Omite Corporation. Copyright 2015.